Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video of our Colt Starting series. This is LSH Live. I am, of course, Jeremy LaRose, and you guys, of course, are amazing. So we're going to kick off here going over where we left off on the last video, talking about our Colt Starting here. We featured this horse in the last video, and he was a little naughty about steering. So in the last video, we were off the lunge line. Macy was doing a little bit of stuff on the ground with us, and we had a hard time steering. So you're going to run into this a lot with your own horses at home. If they get too soft in their neck before you have control of their shoulders, you have an issue. So when we go to steer, it's so important to me that I have control of my horse's shoulders and not their head. So to me, it's a lot like if you have your reins, if you have control of your horse with the reins, that's my steering wheel, right? So when I turn the wheel, I need the car to turn, the horse to turn. So when I pick up my hands and I go to steer this horse around, he's got to pick up his shoulders and come with me. He does not need to steer his neck. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they think that this horse is going to follow his nose and go where his nose is pointing. And while that's true to some extent, it's more important that he follows his shoulders, and his shoulders go where my hands, my eyes, and my seat are going. So I need a horse that will follow where my hands are going. With this horse in particular, we ran into a problem where he would go in a different direction with his shoulders than his head. And you might find this with some of your horses at home, regardless of whether they're colts or not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my rubber strap and I'm going to clip it to the outside of my horse when I go to lunge him. So if I'm going to the left, it's going to be clipped to my right. Now this is a tricky situation when you first go to do this with your horse, because he's got to learn to go through pressure. He's got to learn to go through his face a little bit here. So when you clip him to the side and then you go to the left, he's not going to understand. So I want to just casually, just calmly get back behind him and urge him to go forward. It's really important that he takes a forward step and then I take the pressure away. So this is confusing for him at first. He's feeling the outside pressure. He thinks he should turn to the right, and I'm asking him to go straight ahead or to the left. So you see me being pretty cautious about this. Just urge him forward, give him a little bit of forward motion here. I kind of messed up. I wish I had a whip in my hand. But if you don't use a whip, you are likely to keep it a little bit more low key, which is good, because this is a spot that your horse can get a little bit excitable, and I don't want to just like attack him because he'll rear, right? So this is a tricky spot for a horse to walk up into for the very first time. This is the first time that he ever did it with us, so you can see what that looks like. Obviously, we don't want to flip him over. So if I apply a ton of pressure with my left hand, with my lead hand, he's not going to know what that means. So I've got to kind of give him some room to walk around without any pressure with my lead, with the chain over his nose, because he's got a pull over to the right, holding his head over there. So when I apply pressure for the first time on this left side of his face, because my chain goes from the right to the left, then he's not going to know what that means, and I do not want him to flip over. I don't want him to get himself in a wreck. So it's really important that you get your horse to move forward up into this, and then you're free to lunge. So this is probably, he's going to hit this when he goes to trot, when he gets mad, and he's going to hit it again when he goes to lope off. But if I don't make a big deal out of it, if I don't get him excited, if I keep him going forward, then I don't run into problems. So I just need this horse to keep his legs moving forward. This is good practice for him. At some point in his life, we're going to take his neck away from where his shoulders are going. So we're going to separate his head, neck, and his legs. And this is as good a time as ever to do it, because he's got a bad habit in there. That bad habit is taking his head too far to the left, and I cannot steer him then, right? So I lose control of my shoulders. His head is pointed left, his shoulders are going right, and he just kind of drags me around the arena. So I've got to get control of that. I got to straighten out his head, neck, and his shoulders so that I have more of a cohesive piece. When I pick up my hands and I lay the rein on his neck, I get his head, neck, and shoulders to turn. Because right now, I just pull the rein and I have a ton of chin control to where I get his face to go to the left, but I don't have any shoulder control to make his shoulders actually make the corner. So this was really important for this horse in straightening this horse out, getting him to travel a little bit straighter with his head and neck, get his shoulders up in line, and keep his hip on the inside. So if we have too much of one thing, so like this horse had too much head neck to the inside, and he was able to roll his rib cage, and he was able to take his head and neck to the inside and not have to steer. I've got to rebalance that a bit by taking his head and neck to the outside of my circle, which is going to stand him up on the inside. So by driving him forward, I can reset his ribs, reset his shoulders, and kind of help him get balanced back up through his middle section, because that's what kind of rolled my saddle out, and I ran into a lot of problems with this horse just rolling the saddle to the outside. He just got too soft on the inside. So this, while it's confusing at first, it's a part of his training stage that's really important. If he was a 2-year-old, I probably wouldn't have to do this as soon as I had to with him in like this colt breaking process. So with your 2-year-olds at home, you probably will not run into these issues until a little bit later in the process. This horse is a bit older, he's 4 years old, he's had a bit of handling, so he picked up some bad habits along the way that we have to fix, or I don't have control of him when I ride, and I'm just setting myself up for a bad time. So getting this fixed right here on the ground, really important to continuing to move on and move forward with this horse. We got to address these bad habits as they crop up. So I always have a plan with where I want to go next with my ride, but this is something that we had to kind of shut everything down because it was causing a lot of issues in his training. So without being able to steer, I was running into a lot of issues. So this will hopefully address some of the problems that I ran into where I wasn't able to steer him and go forward. So the time in the video where Macy had to help me out and I was really in a bad spot. So this part right here, where this is, for me, as naughty as it gets, like this is a scary spot for me. It doesn't look like much, like it looks pretty simple, but I know where this goes down the road, right? So I'm trying to get this horse to steer to the right and go forward, and he's saying no and dragging me left. So that isn't much at a walk and jog, but if he decides to do that while I'm loping around, I'm in a scary spot. So hopefully this will address that issue and kind of shore up that little hole that I have where I don't have control. So this whole process, this whole deal is about getting control of your horse here on the ground so that you don't run into problems under saddle. So I'm teaching him that even if his head is to the outside, he still has to pay attention to where his shoulders are going. So no matter where his head neck is, his shoulders ultimately determine where you're going on the circle. So by straightening his body up a little bit, by getting control of both sides, I hopefully can teach this horse that with your head to the outside, you can still steer around here to the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my outside rein on his neck to make the circle happen from here on out. So you see that strap against his neck, asking him to make the circle. So I'm trying to get some control on the outside to stand that shoulder up and keep a circle maintained on the outside, because I don't have any respect out of that rein as it is under saddle right now. The other advantage to doing this is it kind of keeps your hip on the inside and it keeps them from rolling their hip to the outside. So you have to think in terms of, if I have his head and neck to the inside and he gives his neck and his chin really well, so if he bends at his ears and gives his chin to the side really well, it allows his outside shoulder to leak and lean on the outside. The other thing that it allows to happen is his hip can spin out and shear out. So I've got this horse that's dropping his inside shoulder and he's shearing out with his hip and getting his hip on the outside of the circle. And that's always going to be evident because my horse is going to spin dirt to the walls when he lunges. So if you've ever had a horse that will dig in the arena and spin dirt out to the outsides of the arena, so you look like you're lunging in a bowl, then this is why that happens. My goal is to get my horse to land flat so that the dirt doesn't move when he lunges around. And if your horse is digging in, he's going to be spinning his hip out, grabbing for traction, and that's what happens. So this should theoretically fix the roll in my horse's body. So if you remember this horse when we first started, he really shifted the saddle to the outside and rolled it hard. This will help that a ton. The other advantage that this has is it puts this horse in another challenging position and it puts me in control. So if you remember back to we talked about this horse, super confident horse, big strong animal, knows he's big, knows he's strong, kind of tries to throw his weight around. This puts him in another challenging position and kind of establishes my leadership over him. By putting him in a tough situation and having him work to figure it out and rewarding him when he does it right, it puts me in the leadership role, puts me in the coaching role, which is exactly where I want to be. So I'm going to combine this with all the other lunging techniques that I have where I step into him and I get his shoulders to move out and I can pull my line and bump his face. This is kind of another step in the process of getting this horse to make good circles, make balanced circles, and carry himself around. So that's it for today's video, guys. I've got to keep these a little bit shorter. I'm going to probably do an extra video for you just so I get you guys everything that I can, because this one didn't really end where I wanted it to. I spent a lot of time talking about that, but it's important to me, and this helped me a ton in getting control of this horse. So use this. Use that clip to the outside, get your horse a little bit stronger with his hip on the inside, get your horse more flexible, get him stronger with his holding his outside shoulder up. It's good stuff. I recommend it. It is what saved me on this horse. So I would have run into a lot of problems down the road on this horse if I hadn't done this. So I'm gonna do another video, guys. I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for all our new patrons. You guys have been amazing. The growth has been incredible. You guys are spreading the word. We love you for it, and we will see you in the next video.
This is how legends are made. I'm cranking up on the throttle, victory is mine.